All right, so are you ready for this? We're going deep, deep into Microsoft in the late 90s.
Oh, yeah.
That crazy time when the internet was just exploding and this whole thing called a browser was like changing everything.
Yeah.
You wanted to know more about how Microsoft dealt with browsers and that whole Java thing, right?
Right.
Okay, so get this. Our main source is this deposition transcript of Bill Gates himself from 1998.
Oh, wow.
And it's not some boring legal document. It's actually got all this like behind the scenes drama.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're going to love this.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so this transcript really shows us Microsoft at like a turning point.
Hmm.
I mean, they were the kings of the PC world with Windows,
Yeah.
but suddenly you've got Netscape Navigator taking over the internet, and then there's Java, this like hot new programming language that promised to let programs run anywhere.
It was a wild time for sure. A lot of uncertainty.
Old disruption.
Yeah.
So picture this.
Yeah.
Microsoft, they're sitting pretty on their Windows throne, and then these newcomers show up, like ready to shake things up.
Yeah.
Did Microsoft see these guys, Netscape and Java, as like existential threats?
Yeah, that's the big question.
And if they did, how far were they willing to go to protect their kingdom? That's what we're here to uncover.
That's what we're going to find out.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole thing.
Okay.
The story starts way back in 1995.
All right.
These internal emails show that some Microsoft execs were already like freaking out about Netscape.
Uh-huh.
One of them even called them, get this, very, very worrisome.
Wow.
And they were totally aware of how fast they were growing.
Yeah.
Another email was all worried about Netscape's strategy of like opening up API hooks to attract developers.
Right.
What does that even mean?
So these API hooks are basically like little doorways into Netscape's browser.
Oh.
They let developers create software that plugs right in, like extending what the browser can do.
Oh, wow.
Microsoft was worried that these hooks could turn Netscape into a platform itself, like a foundation for a whole software ecosystem.
So this could be the start of a platform war.
Exactly. A battle for control over the entire software world.
The stakes were high.
Huge. Control the platform and you control the future of software.
But wait, didn't Bill Gates like totally dismiss these concerns at first? I mean, in early 1995, he basically said Netscape wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
What changed his mind?
That's the key question. Was Gates really dismissive or was he just downplaying the threat, strategically? Whatever the reason, things took a sharp turn in May 1996.
Oh yeah, things definitely changed.
For sure.
Gates sent out this memo where he basically declared an all-out browser war.
Oh, wow.
He set this crazy ambitious goal, 25% browser market share by the end of that year.
Aggressive.
Yeah, and he even said, quote, if we continue to have minimal share on browsers, a lot of our other efforts will be futile.
Interesting.
What other efforts was he talking about?
Okay, so remember those API hooks and the potential for Netscape to become a whole platform?
Yeah.
Well, Microsoft had their own ambitions, too. They wanted in on online services, advertising revenue. They wanted to control the future of the internet, not just the PC.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And Gates even asked questions about how Netscape was making money. It's like they were really studying their new rival.
Absolutely. They went from downplaying the threat to being laser focused on the browser.
Yeah, someone definitely woke up and smelled the coffee.
Definitely.
So how do they plan to win this browser war?
Yeah, good question.
Internal emails show that they talked about like leveraging their control over Windows to give Internet Explorer an edge. They threw around phrases like making IE the default browser, bundling it with Windows, and even like forcing Office users to use IE.
Yeah, so think about it. Back then, most people got their browser through Windows.
Right.
Pre-installing Internet Explorer could instantly shift market share their way.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah, it was a brilliant, if maybe a bit controversial tactic.
But of course, in his deposition, Bill Gates denied trying to force anyone. He said they were all about offering choice.
Right, and there's that discrepancy again. His public statements versus what those internal emails show makes you wonder what was really going on.
Okay, now for a twist.
Yeah.
Microsoft's relationship with Apple in the late 90s.
Apple.
Yeah, you might be thinking, Apple? What does that have to do with the browser war?
Right. Seems unrelated.
Well, Apple was struggling at the time,
Yeah,
and they were really reliant on Microsoft Office for Mac.
that's true.
And that gave Microsoft some serious leverage.
For sure.
Gates even laid out his two main goals with Apple in an email.
Oh, really?
He said, one, maintain our application share on the platform, and two, see if we can get them to embrace Internet Explorer in some way.
Wow, he wasn't being subtle.
Not at all. And some internal emails even suggest that Microsoft considered using the threat of canceling Office for Mac as a bargaining chip.
Oh, wow. Playing hardball.
Yeah, but here's a twist. In his testimony, Gates claims his main goal with Apple was actually securing a patent cross-licensing agreement. Yeah, and that particular goal doesn't show up in emails to other Microsoft execs.
Huh, another puzzle piece.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's one more layer to this whole Apple thing.
Yep.
Bill Gates' strategy of splitting Apple and Sun Microsystems.
Right, the company behind Java.
Exactly. One Microsoft exec wrote, Bill's top priority is for us to get the browser in the October OS release from Apple. We should do whatever it takes to make this happen.
Whatever it takes.
Why was that so important to Gates?
Well, think about it. An alliance between Apple and Sun could have been a major problem for Microsoft.
Okay.
You've got Apple with its sleek design and loyal fans, and they embrace Java and open up their operating system just like Netscape did with their browser. Developers could write software once and have it run on both Apple computers and any device running Sun's Java platform.
So they could completely bypass Windows.
That was the nightmare scenario for Microsoft, and Gates wanted to prevent it at all costs.
Wow, so he was playing chess, not checkers.
Exactly. He saw the potential threat early on and moved to stop it.
So how did he do it?
Well, Microsoft had a lot of influence. Remember how reliant Apple was on Microsoft Office?
Right.
That gave them leverage. Plus, they were actively trying to create a Java schism.
A what?
Basically fracturing the development of Java and limiting its potential.
So it sounds like a pretty aggressive approach.
Yeah, definitely.
Were they worried about legal trouble?
Well, there were definitely concerns, but they were walking a fine line.
Right.
In a 1997 email, Bill Gates himself wrote, "Part of Java is a direct competitor to Windows." That statement alone shows how seriously they were taking the threat.
They knew the danger, but they were still determined to fight back, even if it meant, bending the rules a little.
It seems that way.
So they were using their power, their influence, and their lawyers to shape the Java world in their favor.
Yeah, it was a complex game with high stakes.
Okay, so to recap, we've seen Microsoft go from dismissing Netscape and Java to full-on war mode. They were ready to use their control over Windows and even play hardball with Apple to protect their turf.
Absolutely.
But that's just the beginning. We'll be back to dig deeper into their tactics around Java, and let me tell you, things are about to get even more interesting.
Oh, I can't wait.
Okay, so we're back, and we're ready to get even deeper into Microsoft's battle plan for the 90s.
Yeah.
Last time, we saw how worried they were about Netscape, and how Netscape could totally disrupt everything. But they weren't just focused on that browser war, remember?
Right.
There was also Java, that programming language that promised a write once, run anywhere world.
Oh, yeah.
That had Microsoft sweating, too.
Oh, absolutely. Java was a direct challenge to their control over, well, everything, PC.
I mean, imagine a world where you don't even need Windows to run software.
Yeah, that was Java's big promise. And it had the power to, completely overturn Microsoft's whole empire.
So how did Microsoft deal with this Java threat?
Well, they couldn't just ignore it, right?
Right.
They knew they had to engage, but on their own terms.
Okay, so what did they do?
They developed their own version of Java.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was called JDirect, and it let developers tap into Windows-specific features.
So they were basically saying, use Java, but make sure it works best with Windows.
Exactly. Their goal was to ensure that even if Java took off, Windows would still be the best place to run those applications.
Sneaky.
It's kind of like, think of it like building a luxury hotel right next to a brand new train station.
Okay.
People can travel wherever they want, but they'll probably choose to stay in comfort and style.
Right, I get it.
So they're embracing Java, but subtly steering it in their own direction.
Very clever. So that's one part of the story, right?
Yeah.
But didn't Microsoft also have a more aggressive approach to dealing with Java?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Remember Gates wanted to split Apple and Sun Microsystems?
Right.
This is where that strategy really comes into play.
Exactly.
Okay, remind me again why that split was so important to them.
Well, an alliance between Apple and Sun could have been a major problem for Microsoft.
Okay.
Picture this. Apple, with its sleek design and tons of loyal fans,
Yeah.
they fully embraced Java and open up their operating system, just like Netscape did with its browser. So now developers can write software once and have it run smoothly on both Apple computers and anything running Sun's Java platform.
So they could totally bypass Windows.
Exactly. That was Microsoft's biggest fear, and Gates was determined to make sure it never happened.
So how did he pull that off?
Yeah.
I doubt it was with friendly chats over coffee.
Well, Microsoft had a lot of power in the tech world.
Yeah.
Remember, Apple was super reliant on Microsoft Office.
Oh, right. That gave them leverage.
Tons of leverage. Plus, they were actively trying to create this Java schism.
A Java schism. What's that?
Basically, they wanted to fracture the development of Java to
that.
limit its growth and its potential, keep it from becoming too powerful.
So a pretty cutthroat strategy. Were they worried about any legal blowback?
There were definitely concerns. They knew they were walking a fine line. In a 1997 email, Bill Gates himself wrote, "Part of Java is a direct competitor to Windows."
Wow.
That statement alone shows you just how seriously they were taking this whole thing.
Yeah, they knew the risks, but they were still determined to fight back, even if it meant bending the rules a little.
Seems like it.
Okay, so they were using their market power, their influence, their lawyers to shape the whole Java landscape to their advantage.
It was a really complex situation with huge stakes.
Hold on, let's go back for a second.
Okay.
You mentioned this Java schism. How exactly were they trying to make that happen?
Okay, so they had a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
First, they pushed their own version of Java, JDirect, which, as we talked about, tied developers closer to Windows.
Right.
Second, they tried to influence the direction of Java's development, pushing for features that benefited them and downplaying the ones that didn't.
So they wanted to pull Java in a direction that helped them, even if it meant breaking up the platform a little bit.
Exactly. And the third part of their plan involved causing some trouble within the Java community itself.
Right.
Remember, Java was developed by Sun Microsystems.
Yeah.
But its success depended on a huge community of developers and companies adopting it.
Right, like a band needs fans to be successful.
Exactly. So Microsoft tried to exploit any disagreements or tensions within the Java community, hoping to weaken its momentum.
So basically divide and conquer.
You got it.
It's all making sense now. They were using technical tricks, strategic partnerships, and even some, let's say, creative tactics to keep Java from becoming a real threat.
It was a high-stakes game, for sure.
And don't forget about Netscape.
Oh, right, Netscape.
They were a major distributor of the Java virtual machine, the software you need to actually run Java programs.
Right.
So they were a key player in this whole Java game, too, where they just pawns in Microsoft's grand scheme.
They were definitely a target. Microsoft knew that Netscape was crucial for Java. If they could weaken Netscape, they could indirectly damage Java's adoption.
Like dominoes. Take out one piece and the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
How did Microsoft target Netscape in the Java world?
Well, they used a similar playbook to what we saw with the browser war.
Oh.
They used their partnerships, their market power to influence deals, and sometimes they even resorted to more aggressive tactics.
Can you give me like a specific example?
Sure. In October 1997, Bill Gates had this crucial meeting with Intel, the chip-making giant.
Intel.
Yeah. In an email before the meeting, Gates wrote, "I have a critical meeting with Intel. I want to convince them that they need to stay away from Oracle NC's network computers and work more closely with Microsoft."
Network computers, what are those?
They were these stripped-down devices that relied heavily on Java and network connectivity.
Okay.
Companies like Oracle and Sun were pushing them as the future of computing.
So they were seen as an alternative to traditional PCs.
Exactly.
So Gates was trying to get Intel to side with Microsoft against Sun, and by extension, Netscape.
It was a power move for sure, and in that same email, Gates revealed his plan to use a classic bargaining chip.
Which was?
The threat of Microsoft adopting a competitor's technology if Intel didn't play ball.
Wow. Oh, okay, what did he say?
He wrote, "I want them to understand that helping NCs in Java will push us to do Windows and other software in fun bytecodes, even if we don't rewrite them in Java."
So basically, side with us, or we'll find another way to win, even if it means partnering with your rivals.
Yeah, pretty much.
It sounds like Microsoft was playing for keeps.
They weren't just competing, they were trying to shape the entire tech landscape.
Yeah, they wanted to control the game.
Exactly. And what's remarkable is how much their strategy changed over time.
Yeah.
They went from dismissing Netscape and Java to aggressively competing, and then to actively manipulating the development and adoption of these potentially game-changing technologies.
It's a fascinating story of ambition, power plays, and doing whatever it takes to stay on top.
Absolutely. And remember, this is just part of the story.
Yeah.
In part 3, we'll see how these strategies actually played out in the real world.
I can't wait.
We'll uncover even more about Microsoft's tactics and the impact they had on the tech industry as a whole.
Awesome. I'm ready. Okay, so are you ready for like the final chapter in our Microsoft story?
Yeah, let's do it.
We've seen how worried they were about Netscape and Java.
Right.
And we've uncovered some of their, strategies for dealing with those threats. Now we get to see how it all played out on the front lines of the browser wars.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, we saw some pretty strong language in those emails.
For sure.
Words like force and leverage kept coming up.
Yeah, they definitely weren't messing around.
It really gives you a sense of a company that would do anything to win.
Absolutely. And one of the most revealing examples comes from this January 1997 email.
Okay.
Bill Gates himself wrote, "We shouldn't force Office users to use our browser. This is wrong."
Sounds like he was against like strong-arming users.
Right. But there's a catch.
Of course there is. What is it?
So Gates was actually arguing against a proposal to give Office users equal access to other browsers.
Oh, wow.
He wanted to make sure Internet Explorer was still the default.
So he wasn't really concerned about user freedom. He just wanted to prioritize their own browser.
Exactly. It was all about control.
Starting to see a pattern here.
Yeah, and this really highlights a key debate going on inside Microsoft at the time.
Sure.
Some execs, like Jim Elchin, wanted even tighter integration with Windows. They thought focusing on the browser war, where they had less market share, was a distraction.
Right.
They wanted to double down on what they were already good at, the operating system.
So it's like two different camps. One wanted to leverage their existing power. The other saw the browser as like the key to the future.
Exactly. It was a battle for the direction of the company.
And who won?
It seems Gates and the browser folks won out in the end, and they weren't afraid to use their power to get what they wanted.
Okay, can you give me an example of that? How did they actually use their influence to change the browser market?
Sure. So there's this interesting case with Intuit, the company that makes Quicken and other financial software.
Yeah, I know them.
In an April 1997 email, we see that Intuit agreed to bundle Internet Explorer with their products.
Okay, that's pretty common. Bundling software was like everywhere back then.
Right, but here's the kicker. Intuit also agreed not to do any marketing deals with other browser makers.
Whoa, so they basically shut out the competition.
Yep, it wasn't enough to promote their own browser. They had to actively prevent others from getting a foothold.
That's pretty ruthless.
It was, and it wasn't just Intuit.
Really?
Microsoft tried to do similar deals with other companies, trying to make Internet Explorer the only choice.
So it was like a monopoly play, controlling the whole board.
Yeah, pretty much.
Did no one challenge them on this?
Well, eventually they did, but at the time, Microsoft was this giant,
Right.
and a lot of companies were afraid to go up against them.
Nobody wants to pick a fight with the company that controls the operating system everyone uses.
Exactly. It was a David and Goliath situation.
So this whole strategy seems pretty cutthroat. Was there any pushback inside Microsoft? Any ethical concerns?
There were definitely some internal debates.
Okay.
I mean, we've already seen how Gates pushed back on some tactics, even if he was mostly motivated by control, not ethics.
Right.
And some execs worried about the legal problems it could cause.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But overall, there seemed to be a feeling that they were in the right, that they could do whatever it took to win.
The ends justify the means, that kind of thinking.
Yeah, but it's still interesting to see those internal discussions happening.
Yeah.
It shows they weren't just blindly following orders. There was some real disagreement going on.
Makes you think how things could have been different if they'd made different choices.
Yeah, but hindsight is always 20/20.
True. So what's the legacy of all this? How did what Microsoft did back then affect the tech world we live in now?
That's the big question, and there's no easy answer, but one thing's for sure.
What's that?
This whole era set the stage for a lot of the fights we're still seeing in tech today.
In what way?
The struggle for platform control, the use of market power, the tension between innovation and competition. These were all issues at the heart of the browser wars, and they're still relevant today.
So those battles from the 90s are still echoing in the digital world we live in.
Absolutely. The strategies and tactics Microsoft used, both the good and the bad, have influenced generations of tech companies.
Yeah.
And the questions they raised about big tech, ethics, and how technology impacts society are more important than ever.
Wow. I never thought of it that way.
It's important to remember that history.
Yeah.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener? What should we take away from all this?
That's a good question.
I think the most important thing is to be an informed and engaged participant in the tech world.
Okay.
Understand the forces at play, question the choices companies make, and think about the long-term consequences of those choices.
Yeah.
The future of technology depends on the decisions we make today, both as individuals and as a society.
That's a powerful message.
We're not just passive consumers of technology. We have a role in shaping it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Really eye-opening.
It's a fascinating story, and it's a reminder that the story of technology is never really over.
Right.
There are always new chapters being written, and it's up to all of us to pay attention and make our voices heard.
Great advice. And with that, we'll wrap up this deep dive into Microsoft in the 90s.
Until next time.